In the year 2347, humanity had finally reached the stars. After centuries of dreaming, exploring, and building, people from Earth had begun to settle on distant planets and moons. These new colonies were places of hope, filled with farmers, scientists, engineers, and families looking for a fresh start. Among these pioneers was Emily Carter, a young botanist who worked tirelessly to grow crops in the harsh soil of a faraway world called Proxima Prime. Her job was simple but vital. She helped feed the colony by finding ways to adapt Earth plants to alien environments. Proxima Prime wasn't glamorous. It was a cold, rocky planet orbiting the red dwarf star Proxima Centauri, one of the closest stars to Earth. The sky was always a dim, reddish hue, and the air was too thin to breathe without special equipment. But despite its challenges, the colony thrived because of people like Emily. She spent her days in greenhouses surrounded by rows of wheat and vegetables, carefully monitoring their growth. Her work gave her purpose and she loved it. Emily wasn't alone on this distant planet. Jake Thompson, her childhood friend from back on Earth, also lived in the colony. Jake had joined the security team that protected the settlement from possible dangers, wild animals, natural disasters, or even pirates. He wasn't a soldier by training, but he was strong, brave, and fiercely loyal to his friends. Over the years, he and Emily had stayed close, sharing meals and stories after long days of work. Their bond was unbreakable, forged through years of friendship and shared dreams. Life on Proxima Prime was peaceful, almost boring at times. The colonists worked hard during the day and gathered around campfires at night, laughing and telling jokes. Children played in the dirt while parents watched over them. For many, it felt like they had found a second home among the stars. But peace, as it often does, came to an abrupt end. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky a deep crimson, something unusual happened. A strange light appeared in the heavens, growing brighter and larger with each passing second. At first, some colonists thought it might be a meteor or perhaps a supply ship arriving early. But when the object slowed down and hovered above the settlement, it became clear that this was no ordinary visitor. It was a massive spaceship, easily 10 times bigger than anything humanity had ever built. The ship didn't land. Instead, smaller craft detached from its underside and descended toward the colony. They moved silently, casting eerie shadows across the ground. Panic spread quickly as the colonists realized what was happening. This wasn't a friendly visit, it was an invasion. Jake was one of the first to react. He grabbed his weapon, a basic rifle designed for hunting rather than combat, and ran outside to warn the others. "Get inside," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Lock your doors and stay low." Most of the colonists followed his instructions, scrambling to find safety. But there wasn't much time. The smaller ships touched down near the edge of the settlement, and creatures emerged from within. They weren't human. Towering over 7 feet tall with sleek silver armor and glowing eyes, they looked like something out of a nightmare. These aliens moved with precision, scanning the area with advanced technology. They weren't there to destroy. They were there to take. Emily heard the commotion from inside the greenhouse. She froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. Should she hide? Run? Fight? Before she could decide, the door burst open, and 2 of the armored figures stepped inside. Their weapons hummed softly, ready to fire at the slightest provocation. Emily raised her hands slowly, trying not to provoke them. "Please," she said, though she doubted they understood her language. "I'm just here to help." The aliens ignored her pleas. One of them pointed a device at her, and a bright flash of light engulfed her vision. Then everything went black. When Emily woke up, she found herself in a dark, cramped cell. Her head throbbed, and her body ached from the fall. Around her, she saw other women from the colony, all looking equally confused and frightened. Some were crying quietly, while others stared blankly into space, unable to process what had happened. Emily recognized a few faces, neighbors, co-workers, friends, but many were strangers. Whoever these aliens were, they hadn't been selective in their abductions. Back on Proxima Prime, Jake was devastated. He had tried to fight back, but his primitive weapon was no match for the aliens' advanced technology. Several colonists had been injured in the attack, including Jake himself, who now bore a nasty gash on his forehead. Still, he refused to give up. As soon as the alien ships disappeared into the sky, he limped toward the colony's communications tower. With shaking hands, he sent out a distress signal, hoping someone, somewhere would hear it. "Emergency broadcast," Jake said into the microphone, his voice hoarse but determined. "This is Jake Thompson from Proxima Prime Colony. We've been attacked by unknown hostiles. Multiple civilians abducted, including Emily Carter. Request immediate assistance. Repeat, we need help." The message traveled across light years of empty space, reaching listening posts on nearby planets and eventually making its way back to Earth. Within hours, news of the abduction spread like wildfire. Social media erupted with outrage. Governments held emergency meetings and military commanders began drafting plans. The Vornak Empire, the name given to the alien civilization responsible for the attack, had made a grave mistake. By targeting humans, they had awakened a species known for its resilience, creativity, and determination. On Earth, President Daniel Hayes addressed the nation from the White House. His face was grim as he spoke to millions of viewers. "Today we stand united in our grief and anger," he said. "The abduction of innocent civilians is an act of war, plain and simple. We will not tolerate such aggression. To the Vornak Empire, you have taken members of our family. If you do not return them safely, we will respond with every resource at our disposal." His words resonated deeply with people around the globe. Parents hugged their children tighter. Soldiers volunteered for duty. Scientists worked overtime to develop new technologies that could level the playing field against the technologically superior Vornak. Humanity, once fragmented and divided, now stood together as one. Meanwhile, aboard the alien ship, Emily and the other captives struggled to make sense of their situation. They were fed strange food pellets and subjected to medical scans that left them feeling violated. The aliens didn't speak to them, nor did they offer any explanation for why they had been taken. All they knew was that they were prisoners, trapped in a metal cage hurtling through the void of space. Despite the fear and uncertainty, Emily refused to give in to despair. She remembered Jake's bravery during the attack and drew strength from it. Slowly, she began talking to the other women, encouraging them to stay strong. "We're not alone," she told them. "People are looking for us. They won't stop until they bring us home." Her words brought a flicker of hope to the group. Though none of them knew what the future held, they clung to the belief that humanity wouldn't abandon them. Little did they know, their rescue would spark a conflict that would change the galaxy forever. For now, however, they could only wait. The Vornak Empire was vast, ancient, and powerful. For thousands of years, they had ruled over dozens of star systems, expanding their territory through conquest and intimidation. To them, weaker species were either tools to be used or obstacles to be removed. Humans, with their fragile bodies and primitive technology, fell squarely into the former category. The abduction of Emily Carter and the other women from Proxima Prime wasn't an act of cruelty. It was science. At least that's how the Vornak justified it. On board the massive alien cruiser Zarnok, the abducted women were treated like labby rats. Each day brought new tests, scans, and experiments designed to unlock the secrets of human biology. The Vornak scientists were fascinated by humanity's adaptability, resilience, and emotional complexity. They couldn't understand how such a physically weak species had managed to spread across the stars so quickly. To them, humans were puzzles waiting to be solved. Emily and the others endured these procedures in silence, doing their best to remain calm despite the fear coursing through their veins. The aliens communicated through strange clicks and hums, occasionally using translation devices that rendered their words into broken, mechanical English. "You will cooperate," one of the scientists said during one particularly invasive procedure. Resistance is irrelevant, but resistance was exactly what Emily planned to offer. She might not have been able to fight back physically, but she could still defy them in small, meaningful ways. When asked questions, she gave vague answers or pretended not to understand. If they handed her food, she ate slowly, stalling to disrupt their schedules. and when they left her alone in her cell, she whispered words of encouragement to the other captives, reminding them that they weren't defeated yet. "You hear me?" she said one night, her voice barely audible. "We're stronger than they think. Don't let them break you." Her words echoed softly in the dimly lit chamber, reaching the ears of women who desperately needed hope. Some nodded silently. Others reached out to squeeze her hand through the bars separating their cells. Together, they formed a fragile but unbreakable bond, a reminder that even in captivity they were not alone. Back on Earth, the news of the abduction had ignited a firestorm. Governments around the world convened emergency sessions, discussing how best to respond to the Vornak threat. Military leaders mapped out strategies, while diplomats debated whether negotiation was even possible. But for ordinary people, there was no room for debate. The images of frightened colonists and the haunting stories of those left behind struck a chord deep within the human soul. This wasn't just an attack on Proxima Prime, it was an attack on all of humanity. President. Daniel Hayes knew he had to act decisively. Sitting in the Oval Office, surrounded by advisors and generals, he weighed his options carefully. "We can't let this stand," he said finally, his voice firm. "If we do nothing, they'll see us as weak. Every species in the galaxy will think they can walk all over us." General Laura Bennett, head of the newly formed Galactic Defense Force, agreed. "Sir, we may not have their level of technology, but we've got something they don't. Numbers. Billions of humans ready to fight for our survival. We can turn this into our advantage." With that, plans were set into motion. Factories ramped up production of weapons and ships. Scientists worked tirelessly to reverse engineer alien tech recovered from previous encounters. Volunteers poured in from every corner of human space, eager to join the cause. Even civilians contributed, donating supplies, offering their skills, and spreading messages of unity online. Humanity had never been more united, or more dangerous. Jake Thompson, still recovering from his injuries, felt a surge of determination. He couldn't sit idly by while Emily and the others suffered. When he heard about the formation of Recon Team Alpha, a special task force dedicated to infiltrating Vornak territory and rescuing the captives, he immediately signed up. Alongside him were soldiers like Alex Martinez, a sharpshooter with nerves of steel, and Maria Lopez, an engineer, skilled at hacking enemy systems. Together they trained relentlessly, preparing for the mission of a lifetime. Their training was grueling. Days started before dawn and ended long after sunset. They practiced zero-gravity combat, learned to pilot stolen Vornak vessels, and studied every scrap of intelligence available about the Empire. Jake pushed himself harder than ever, driven by thoughts of Emily. He replayed memories of their childhood together, the laughter, the adventures, the promises they'd made to always look out for each other. Those memories became his fuel, pushing him to excel where others might falter. As Recon Team Alpha prepared for their mission, tensions aboard the Zarnak began to rise. The Vornak scientists grew frustrated with their inability to fully comprehend human behavior. Despite their advanced tools and methods, the captives refused to break. Emily's quiet defiance inspired the others to resist as well. Small acts of sabotage became commonplace, tampering with equipment, smearing dirt on scanners, even feign wide-eyed confusion when asked direct questions. These actions didn't stop the experiments entirely, but they slowed them down, forcing the Vornak to waste time and resources. Rumors of humanity's response reached the Zarnak's crew, further complicating matters. Whispers spread among the lower-ranking officers about Earth's mobilization efforts. Some expressed doubts about the wisdom of provoking such a large and determined species. Others dismissed these concerns, confident in the Empire's superiority. But uncertainty lingered, casting a shadow over the once orderly operations of the ship. For Emily, hearing fragments of these conversations through the walls of her cell was both terrifying and empowering. She realized that humanity's resolve was having an effect not just on Earth but here in the heart of the Vornak Empire. It gave her strength, reinforcing her belief that rescue was possible. "They're coming for us," she whispered to the woman in the next cell. "I know it. Her optimism wasn't unfounded. Recon Team Alpha had pinpointed the location of the Zarnok using data intercepted from Vornak transmissions. Disguised in stolen enemy vessels and equipped with cloaking technology, they slipped undetected into Vornak-controlled space. Their journey was perilous, filled with close calls and moments of sheer luck, but they pressed on, knowing that failure wasn't an option. Finally, after weeks of travel, they arrived at the coordinates. The Zarnok loomed ahead, a hulking monstrosity of metal and energy. Its surface gleamed ominously under the light of a nearby star. Jake felt a lump form in his throat as he gazed at the ship. Somewhere inside was Emily, and he was going to bring her home. The team's infiltration plan was simple but risky. Using hacked access codes and disguises, they would board the cruiser and locate the detention area where the captives were being held. Once inside, they would disable security systems, free the prisoners, and escape before the Vornak realized what was happening. It sounded straightforward enough, but everyone knew the margin for error was razor thin. As they approached the Zarnok, Jake took a deep breath. His heart pounded in his chest, but his mind was clear. He thought of Emily, of the promise he'd made to protect her, and of the billions of humans counting on him to succeed. "Let's move," he said quietly, gripping his weapon tightly. One by one, the team slipped aboard the alien vessel, disappearing into its labyrinthine corridors. What they found inside shocked them. The Zarnok was a maze of cold, sterile hallways, illuminated by harsh blue lights. Strange symbols covered the walls, and the air smelled faintly of ozone. Alien workers moved about their tasks, oblivious to the intruders in their midst. Recon Team Alpha moved cautiously, sticking to the shadows and avoiding patrols. Every step brought them closer to their goal, and closer to danger. When they finally reached the detention area, Jake felt a surge of relief. Through a reinforced glass window, he saw rows of cells containing human captives. Among them was Emily. She looked thinner, paler, but her eyes still burned with determination. For a moment, their gazes locked, and Jake felt a wave of emotion crash over him. He wanted to rush to her, to pull her into his arms and tell her everything would be okay. But there was no time for reunions, not yet. Working quickly, Maria disabled the locking mechanisms on the cells, freeing the captives one by one. Chaos erupted as the women stumbled out, blinking in the sudden brightness. Some cried tears of joy, others hugged each other tightly, overwhelmed by the reality of their rescue. Emily ran to Jake, throwing her arms around him. "I knew you'd come," she said, her voice trembling. "We're getting you out of here," Jake replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Stay close." But their victory was short-lived. Alarms blared throughout the ship, red lights flashing in warning. The Vornak had discovered the breach. Guards flooded the corridors, weapons drawn, shouting orders in their guttural language. Recon Team Alpha sprang into action, forming a protective circle around the freed captives. Shots rang out as they fought their way toward the escape shuttle. It was a desperate retreat, filled with narrow escapes and split-second decisions. Bullets whizzed past, striking walls and consoles. Smoke filled the air, making it hard to see. But somehow they pushed forward, driven by sheer willpower. When they finally reached the shuttle bay, the door slid open just in time. One by one, the team and the captives scrambled aboard, hearts pounding with adrenaline. The rescue mission aboard the Zarnok had been a success, but it came at a cost. Recon Team Alpha barely escaped with their lives, and the shuttle carrying them back to friendly territory was battered and damaged from the intense firefight during their retreat. As they limped through space, the freed captives sat in silence, their faces pale and their bodies stiff with exhaustion. Emily Carter leaned against Jake Thompson, her head resting on his shoulder as she tried to process everything that had happened. She felt relief, yes, but also anger and fear. The Vornak Empire had underestimated humanity once, and now they would pay for it. Back on Earth, the news of the successful rescue spread like wildfire. Images of the freed captives arriving safely at a human military outpost were broadcast across every channel. The sight of brave soldiers escorting weary but determined survivors brought tears to the eyes of millions. People cheered in the streets, waving flags and chanting slogans of unity. For the first time in years, humanity felt truly connected, not divided by borders or politics, but united by a shared purpose. President Daniel Hayes addressed the nation, again this time with a tone of quiet strength. Standing behind a podium flanked by military leaders, he spoke directly to the people. "Today we celebrate a victory," he began, his voice steady. "But let us not forget why we fight. The Vornak Empire made a grave mistake when they abducted our people. They thought we were weak, insignificant. Now they know better." Paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "We have shown them that humanity is not to be trifled with. But this is only the beginning. If the Vornak do not release all remaining captives and leave our territories, we will respond, with overwhelming force. We are prepared to defend ourselves and our way of life, no matter the cost." His speech was met with thunderous applause, both in the room and across the globe. It was clear that humanity was ready to take the fight to the Vornak. But preparing for war wasn't easy. The Vornak Empire's technology far surpassed anything humans had ever encountered, and closing that gap would require ingenuity, sacrifice, and sheer determination. General Laura Bennett took charge of the preparations. A tall, no-nonsense woman, with sharp features and an even sharper mind, she had spent her career studying alien civilizations and developing strategies for interstellar conflict. Under her leadership, the Galactic Defense Force transformed from a loosely organized coalition into a well-oiled machine. Factories worked around the clock to produce weapons, ships, and supplies. Scientists raced to reverse engineer alien tech, recovered from past encounters, hoping to give humanity an edge in battle. One breakthrough came unexpectedly thanks to Dr. Samantha Reed, a brilliant physicist working in a top-secret research facility. While analyzing fragments of Vornak technology, she discovered a way to modify human ship engines to achieve faster-than-light speeds, comparable to those of the Vornak cruisers. This innovation was a game-changer. It meant humanity could finally match the Vornak in terms of mobility, giving them a fighting chance in deep space. Meanwhile, volunteers poured in from every corner of human space. Men and women from all walks of life answered the call to arms, eager to protect their families and their future. Some were seasoned soldiers. Others had never held a weapon before. Training camps sprang up on Earth and its colonies, turning ordinary civilians into disciplined fighters in record time. Even children contributed in their own way, holding fundraisers and writing letters of encouragement to the troops. Emily and the other rescued captives became symbols of hope and resilience. After returning to Earth, they shared their harrowing experiences with the world. Emily, in particular, emerged as a powerful voice, speaking at rallies and appearing on television to remind people what was at stake. "They took us because they thought we were weak," she said during one emotional speech. "But they were wrong. We resisted them in every way we could. And now, it's your turn to resist, to show them that humanity cannot be broken." Her words resonated deeply with audiences. People saw themselves in her story, ordinary individuals thrust into extraordinary circumstances, finding strength they didn't know they had. Emily's courage inspired countless others to join the war effort, whether by enlisting, volunteering, or simply supporting the cause however they could. Jake, too, found himself thrust into the spotlight. Though he preferred action to speeches, his role in the rescue mission made him a hero overnight. Reporters hounded him for interviews, and strangers stopped him on the street to thank him. At first he struggled with the attention, uncomfortable, being hailed as a savior. But over time, he realized he could use his newfound platform to rally support for the war effort. He visited schools, factories, and community centers, sharing stories of bravery and emphasizing the importance of standing together. As humanity prepared for war, tensions within the Vornak Empire grew. News of the failed abduction and subsequent rescue reached the Empire's ruling council, sparking heated debates among its members. Some argued that humanity posed no real threat and should be ignored. Others warned that underestimating humans could lead to disaster. The council's leader, High Commander Zorvak, dismissed these concerns, confident in the Empire's superiority. "These primitives are nothing more than insects," he declared. "Let them come, we will crush them." But not everyone shared his confidence. Many lower-ranking officers and scientists expressed doubts about the wisdom of provoking such a large and determined species. Whispers of dissent spread throughout the Empire, fueled by rumors of humanity's rapid advancements and growing unity. Some even questioned whether the abduction had been worth it, given the backlash it had provoked. For the first time in centuries, cracks began to form in the Empire's seemingly impenetrable facade. Despite these internal divisions, the Vornak wasted no time preparing for humanity's retaliation. Fleets were mobilized, weapons upgraded, and defenses reinforced. Their commanders studied human tactics, searching for weaknesses to exploit. They believed that superior firepower and experience would win the day, but they underestimated the power of human creativity and adaptability. On Earth, General Bennett finalized plans for humanity's counterattack. The strategy was bold and risky, designed to strike at the heart of the Vornak Empire while minimizing civilian casualties. Key targets included supply lines, communication hubs, and slave labor camps where captured species were forced to work under brutal conditions. By crippling the Empire's infrastructure, humanity hoped to weaken its grip on the galaxy and force a surrender. Recon Team Alpha played a crucial role in the operation. Having proven their skills during the rescue mission, they were tasked with gathering intelligence and sabotaging critical Vornak assets. Alex Martinez, the team's sharpshooter, spent hours practicing with experimental weapons developed specifically for the mission. Maria Lopez, the engineer, worked tirelessly to improve the team's cloaking devices and hacking tools, and Jake, still driven by thoughts of Emily, pushed himself harder than ever, determined to make a difference. As the launch date approached, emotions ran high. Soldiers said goodbye to loved ones, unsure if they'd ever see them again. Families gathered for final meals, exchanging hugs and whispered promises to stay safe. In cities and towns across the globe, people prayed for victory, lighting candles and hanging banners bearing messages of hope and defiance. Finally, the day arrived. Humanity's combined fleets assembled in orbit above Earth, a breathtaking sight that filled viewers with awe and pride. Hundreds of ships, each emblazoned with the emblem of the Galactic Defense Force, formed a massive armada ready to face whatever lay ahead. General Bennett stood on the bridge of the flagship Liberty Dawn, surveying the scene with quiet satisfaction. "This is it," she said to her crew. "Today we show the galaxy what humanity is made of." With that, the fleet jumped into hyperspace, heading straight for Vornak-controlled territory. The journey was tense, with everyone aware of the stakes. Pilots monitored their instruments closely, scanning for signs of enemy activity. Engineers worked non-stop to keep the ships running smoothly, knowing that any malfunction could spell disaster. Morale remained high, bolstered by stories of bravery and sacrifice shared among the crew. When the fleet emerged from hyperspace near the edge of the Vornak Empire, they were greeted by a wall of enemy ships. The Vornak had anticipated humanity's arrival and positioned their forces accordingly. For a moment there was silence, a breathless pause as both sides sized each other up. Then, without warning, the battle began. Lasers streaked across the void, illuminating the darkness with bursts of light. Explosions rocked the hulls of ships, sending debris spiraling into space. Pilots maneuvered their vessels with incredible skill, dodging enemy fire while launching counterattacks. Inside the Liberty Dawn, alarms blared as the ship shook from impacts. General Bennett barked orders, her voice calm but commanding. "Hold steady. Focus on disabling their command ships." Amid the chaos, Recon Team Alpha executed their part of the plan. Using stolen Vornak vessels and advanced cloaking technology, they slipped past enemy lines undetected. Their target was a heavily fortified space station responsible for coordinating the Empire's military operations. If they succeeded in destroying it, the Vornak fleet would lose its ability to communicate effectively. The explosion of the Vornak command station sent shockwaves through the battlefield, both literal and figurative. The massive fireball lit up the darkness of space, a beacon of humanity's determination to fight back. For Recon Team Alpha, the mission had been a success, but it wasn't over yet. As their stolen Vornak ship raced away from the wreckage, Jake Thompson gripped the controls tightly, his knuckles white. Maria Lopez monitored the rear cameras, her eyes scanning for any signs of pursuit. Alex Martinez sat silently, his rifle, ready in case enemy fighters appeared. "We did it," Maria said finally, breaking the tense silence. Her voice was soft but filled with relief. "That station is gone." Jake nodded, though his mind was still racing. He knew they weren't safe yet. The Vornak fleet was vast, and even without their command station, they wouldn't give up easily. "Don't celebrate too soon," he muttered. "We're not out of this yet." As if on cue, alarms blared inside the cockpit. A squadron of Vornak fighters had spotted them and was closing in fast. Their sleek, angular ships moved with eerie precision, weapons charged and ready to fire. Jake cursed under his breath and pushed the engines to their limit, weaving through debris fields and dodging laser blasts. The stolen ship groaned under the strain, its systems struggling to keep up with the demands of high-speed maneuvers. "Hold on," Jake shouted as he executed a sharp turn, narrowly avoiding a direct hit. Behind him, Maria worked frantically to activate the cloaking device again, hoping to buy them some time. It flickered on just as another volley of shots streaked past, missing them by inches. For now they were invisible, but that wouldn't last long. Meanwhile, aboard the Liberty Dawn, General Laura Bennett watched the battle unfold with a mix of pride and anxiety. The destruction of the command station had thrown the Vornak into disarray, giving humanity a significant advantage. But the enemy was far from defeated. Their ships regrouped quickly, forming new formations and launching counterattacks. The fight was far from over. "Focus on their carriers," Bennett ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "Take out their ability to deploy reinforcements." Pilots acknowledged her commands, diving toward the massive Vornak vessels that served as mobile bases for smaller craft. Explosions erupted across the battlefield as human ships unleashed salvos of missiles and energy beams. For every victory, however, there was a cost. Several human vessels were lost in the process, their crews sacrificing themselves to protect their comrades. Each loss weighed heavily on Bennett's shoulders, but she couldn't afford to hesitate. This was war, and sacrifices had to be made. Back on Earth, Emily Carter followed the updates anxiously. News feeds streamed live footage of the battle, showing flashes of light and fiery explosions against the backdrop of space. She clenched her fists tightly, trying to stay calm. Every burst of static or sudden cut to a different angle made her heart race. Was Jake okay? Had Recon Team Alpha escaped? She wanted to believe they were safe, but the uncertainty gnawed at her. Around her, people gathered in public squares, watching massive screens set up to broadcast the battle. Some cheered when human ships scored hits. Others fell silent when losses were reported. Families held hands, praying for loved ones fighting in the fray. Children asked questions no one could answer. Why were they fighting? Who were the Vornak? Would everything be all right? Emily tried to focus on the bigger picture. Humanity had come so far in such a short time, from scattered colonies on distant planets to a united force standing up to an ancient empire. The progress was staggering. She reminded herself that fear and doubt wouldn't help anyone. Instead, she joined others in organizing care packages for soldiers' families and writing letters of encouragement to those still serving. If she couldn't fight directly, she could support those who did. In deep space, Recon Team Alpha finally managed to lose their pursuers. After hours of evasive maneuvers and careful navigation, they slipped into an asteroid field where the Vornak fighters hesitated to follow. Jake exhaled sharply, leaning back in his seat as the tension eased slightly. "All right," he said, his voice hoarse from shouting orders earlier. "Let's regroup and figure out our next move." Maria pulled up a map of nearby star systems, searching for a safe place to rendezvous with the main fleet. "There's a small outpost about 2 jumps from here," she said, pointing to a blinking dot on the screen. It's abandoned, but it should have enough supplies to patch us up before we rejoin the others. Jake nodded. Good. Let's head there. As they set course, Alex spoke up for the first time in hours. Do you think we made a difference? He asked quietly. I mean, really? Jake glanced at him, then at Maria. Both of them looked tired but resolute. Yeah, Jake replied after a moment. We took out their command station. That's huge. They'll feel it. But it's not enough, Maria added, her tone firm. This war isn't just about winning battles. It's about proving something to them and to ourselves. We can't stop until the Vornak understand that messing with us was the biggest mistake they ever made. Her words lingered in the air as the ship sailed silently through the void. Outside, the asteroids drifted lazily, their jagged surfaces reflecting faint glimmers of starlight. Inside, the team prepared for what lay ahead. None of them knew how long the war would last or how many more battles they'd have to fight. But they all shared one belief. Humanity wouldn't back down. On the Liberty Dawn, the tide of the battle began to shift decisively in humanity's favor. With their command station destroyed and their coordination faltering, the Vornak struggled to mount effective counterattacks. Human ships pressed their advantage, targeting key vulnerabilities in the enemy fleet. One by one, Vornak cruisers fell, their hulking forms reduced to smoldering wreckage. General Bennett stood on the bridge, watching the scene unfold with quiet satisfaction. Keep pushing, she told her officers. Don't let them recover. But, even as the Vornak forces crumbled, Bennett couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Empire was vast and its leaders wouldn't surrender lightly. This defeat would sting, but it wouldn't destroy them. Not yet. Humanity would need to strike deeper, harder, and smarter to end the conflict once and for all. Hours later, Recon Team Alpha reached the abandoned outpost. It was little more than a cluster of domes connected by narrow corridors, built into the side of a barren moon. Dust coated every surface, and the airlocks creaked as they sealed shut behind the team. Still, it provided shelter, and that was enough. As they worked to repair their ship and tend to minor injuries, Jake allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. He thought about Emily, about Earth, and about the countless lives depending on humanity's success. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, but also a spark of hope. They had faced impossible odds and survived. If they could do it once, they could do it again. By the time they rejoined the main fleet, the battle had entered its final stages. The remaining Vornak ships were retreating, their formation breaking apart as they fled into hyperspace. Cheers erupted across the human fleet, echoing through comm channels and filling hearts with cautious optimism. For the first time in months, it felt like victory might actually be within reach. But General Bennett remained vigilant. This isn't over, she reminded her crew. They'll regroup. They'll come back stronger. We need to be ready. Her words resonated deeply. Humanity had struck a blow against the Vornak Empire, but the road ahead was still long and uncertain. War rarely ended with a single battle, and the price of freedom was often paid in blood and sacrifice. As the fleet limped back toward friendly territory for repairs and resupply, Recon Team Alpha reunited with their comrades. Hugs were exchanged, stories shared, and wounds tended to. Despite the exhaustion etched on everyone's faces, there was a sense of camaraderie that hadn't existed before. They had faced death together and emerged victorious. That bond would carry them through whatever challenges lay ahead. For Emily, hearing confirmation that Jake and the team were safe brought tears of relief. She hugged him tightly when they finally met again, holding on as if afraid he might disappear. You came back, she whispered, her voice trembling. I promised I would, Jake replied, pulling her close. And I always keep my promises. The war was far from over, but for now, humanity had reason to celebrate. Against all odds, they had proven themselves capable of standing toe-to-toe with one of the galaxy's most powerful empires. The Vornak had underestimated them once, and they would never make that mistake again. The victory against the Vornak fleet gave humanity a much-needed boost, but it also came with a sobering realization. The war was far from over. The Vornak Empire still controlled vast regions of space, and its leaders would not take defeat lightly. Retreating ships regrouped in safer territories, repairing damage and plotting their next move. For humanity, this brief pause in the fighting was an opportunity to prepare for what lay ahead. General Laura Bennett wasted no time. She convened a meeting with her top advisors aboard the Liberty Dawn, the flagship that had become the heart of humanity's war effort. The room buzzed with energy as officers reviewed maps of Vornak-controlled systems, analyzing weak points and strategizing their next offensive. "We've proven we can hit them hard," Bennett said, pacing back and forth. "But now we need to strike where it hurts the most, their homeworld." The idea of attacking the Vornak capital planet was bold, almost reckless. It was heavily fortified, surrounded by layers of defense systems and guarded by elite fleets. But Bennett believed it was the only way to end the war decisively. "If we cripple their command center, they'll collapse," she explained. "They're arrogant. They think we're too primitive to reach their core worlds. Let's prove them wrong." Recon Team Alpha was called into the meeting shortly after. Jake, Maria, and Alex stood at attention as Bennett outlined their role in the upcoming mission. "You've done incredible work so far," she told them. "But this will be your toughest challenge yet. We need you to infiltrate the capital system and gather intelligence on their defenses. Without that information, we can't plan the Tau attack." Jake nodded, his expression serious. He knew the risks involved, but he also understood the importance of their mission. If humanity was going to win this war, sacrifices had to be made, and Recon Team Alpha was ready to make them. Meanwhile, Emily Carter continued to play a vital role back on Earth. Though she wasn't a soldier, her experiences aboard the Zarnak made her a powerful advocate for unity and resilience. She traveled across the globe, speaking at rallies and visiting military bases to thank the troops. Her speeches were simple but heartfelt, reminding people why they were fighting, not just for revenge, but for freedom and justice. One evening, after addressing a crowd in New York City, Emily found herself standing on a rooftop overlooking the skyline. The city lights twinkled like stars, a stark contrast to the darkness of space she had endured during her captivity. She thought about Jake and the others risking their lives so far from home. She wished she could do more, but for now, inspiring hope was her contribution to the war effort. Her phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. It was a message from Jake. "Mission underway. Stay safe." Those 3 words brought both comfort and worry. She replied quickly, "Come back alive." Deep in Vornak territory, Recon Team Alpha moved cautiously through the shadows. Disguised, in stolen uniforms and using advanced cloaking devices, they slipped past patrols and avoided detection as they approached the Empire's inner systems. Their goal was to reach a secret listening post near the capital planet, a facility designed to monitor communications and detect threats. Maria led the way, her fingers dancing over her tablet as she hacked into security systems. "Almost there," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Behind her, Alex kept watch, his rifle ready in case anyone stumbled upon them. Jake brought up the rear, scanning the area for signs of danger. When they finally reached the listening post, Maria went to work immediately. She plugged her device into the main console, downloading terabytes of data while keeping an eye on the door. "This is gold," she muttered excitedly. "Maps, troop movements, everything we need." But just as she finished transferring the files, alarms blared throughout the facility. Someone had discovered their presence. "Move!" Jake shouted, grabbing Maria's arm and pulling her toward the exit. Alex fired a few shots to cover their retreat, forcing approaching guards to take cover. The team sprinted through the corridors, dodging laser blasts and leaping over obstacles. Outside, their ship waited, engines idling. Jake jumped into the pilot's seat while Maria and Alex strapped themselves in. With a roar, the ship lifted off, narrowly avoiding a volley of missiles launched from the ground. As they escaped into hyperspace, Maria reviewed the stolen data. "This is it," she said, her eyes wide with excitement. "We've got their entire defense grid mapped out. If we time our attack right, we can break through." Back at headquarters, General Bennett studied the intelligence gathered by Recon Team Alpha. She spread holographic maps across the table, highlighting key locations and potential entry points. Their main shield generator is here, she said, pointing to a massive structure on the outskirts of the capital city. Take that out and their defenses will crumble. The plan was risky but straightforward. A small strike team would disable the shield generator, allowing the main fleet to bombard the capital planet. Once the shields were down, ground forces would land and secure the area, forcing the Vornak leadership to surrender. Volunteers stepped forward eagerly, knowing the stakes. Among them were Jake, Alex, and Maria, who insisted on joining the assault despite the dangers. "We started this," Jake argued when Bennett hesitated. "Let us finish it." Reluctantly, she agreed, assigning them to lead the strike team. "Don't let me down," she warned. "The fate of humanity rests on your shoulders." The day of the final assault arrived. Humanity's combined fleets assembled in orbit above a neutral moon, preparing for the jump to Vornak space. Soldiers checked their weapons, pilots ran diagnostics on their ships, and engineers made last-minute adjustments to ensure everything functioned perfectly. Tension hung thick in the air, but so did determination. On the Liberty Dawn, Bennett addressed her crew one last time. "Today we write history," she said, her voice steady and strong. "Today we show the galaxy that humanity cannot be broken. No matter what happens, remember why we fight. For our families, our future, and our freedom." Cheers erupted throughout the ship as the fleet entered hyperspace. When they emerged near the Vornak capital, the sight was breathtaking. The planet loomed large, its surface covered in gleaming cities and sprawling fortresses. Above it, hundreds of enemy ships formed a protective barrier, ready to defend their homeworld at all costs. The battle began with a deafening roar. Human ships charged forward, firing salvos of missiles and energy beams. The Vornak responded, in kind, their weapons cutting through space with terrifying precision. Explosions lit up the void as ships on both sides clashed in a brutal dance of destruction. Amid the chaos, Recon Team Alpha launched their shuttle, slipping past the front lines and heading straight for the shield generator. The journey was perilous, with enemy fighters swarming around them like angry insects. Jake maneuvered the shuttle expertly, dodging fire and weaving through debris fields. "Hold on," he shouted as they descended toward the planet's surface. When they landed near the generator complex, the team sprang into action. Maria set charges at critical junctions, while Alex provided cover, picking off guards with deadly accuracy. Jake kept watch, ensuring no reinforcements arrived to stop them. Time seemed to slow as the seconds ticked away, each moment bringing them closer to success or failure. Finally, Maria gave the signal. "Charges are set. Let's go." The team sprinted back to their shuttle, leaping inside just as the first explosion rocked the complex. Fire and smoke billowed into the sky as the shield generator collapsed, leaving the capital vulnerable to attack. High above, the human fleet seized the opportunity, launching a devastating barrage that shattered the Vornak defenses. Ground forces followed, landing in waves and securing strategic positions. Resistance was fierce, but humanity's resolve was stronger. Soldiers fought side by side, pushing deeper into the heart of the Empire. Civilians cheered as liberation forces freed enslaved species and dismantled oppressive regimes. Inside the capital city, the Vornak High Council convened. In panic, High Commander Zorvak slammed his fist on the table, furious at the turn of events. "How could this happen?" he roared. "We are the greatest power in the galaxy." His advisors cowered, offering no answers. Outside, explosions echoed through the streets as human forces closed in. Knowing defeat was inevitable, the council sent a message of surrender, pleading for mercy. General Bennett received the transmission aboard the Liberty Dawn. She listened carefully, weighing her response. Finally, she spoke. "Your reign of tyranny ends today. Surrender unconditionally and we will spare your people. Resist and you will face annihilation." The Vornak had no choice but to comply. Hours later, their leaders signed a peace treaty, agreeing to dismantle their empire and release all captives. Humanity had won. For Emily, hearing the news brought tears of joy. She hugged strangers in the streets, celebrating alongside millions of others. The war was over and humanity had emerged victorious, but she knew the scars would linger. For the soldiers who fought, the families who lost loved ones, and the countless lives forever changed by conflict. Jake returned home a hero, though he didn't see himself that way. To him, the real heroes were the ordinary people who refused to give up, even when faced with overwhelming odds. As he embraced Emily, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. Together they looked to the stars, knowing that humanity's journey was just beginning. The war was over. The Vornak Empire had surrendered, its leaders humiliated and stripped of their power. Humanity's victory was celebrated across the galaxy, a testament to courage, unity, and determination. For the first time in years, people dared to dream of peace, not just for themselves but for all species oppressed by the Vornak. On Earth, cities erupted in celebration, streets filled with cheering crowds, waving flags and singing songs of triumph. Fireworks lit up the night, sky painting it with colors brighter than any star. Families gathered in parks and squares, sharing stories of loved ones who had fought and sacrificed so much. Children climbed onto statues of heroes, pretending to be warriors defending the galaxy. It was a moment of pure joy, a reminder that, even in the darkest times, hope could light the way. Emily Carter stood on a stage in Central Park addressing a sea of faces. Her voice carried strength and warmth, echoing through speakers set up for the occasion. "Today we celebrate not just a victory, but a new beginning," she said, her eyes scanning the crowd. "We've shown the galaxy what it means to stand together, to fight for what is right. But this isn't the end, it's the start of something greater." Her words resonated deeply. Humanity had proven itself capable of greatness, not just through warfare, but through compassion. In the weeks following the surrender, human forces worked tirelessly to rebuild devastated worlds and free enslaved species. Colonies once ruled by the Vornak were transformed into havens of freedom, where diverse races could live side by side. The scars of oppression ran deep, but humanity offered a helping hand, showing that kindness could heal wounds no weapon ever could. Jake Thompson returned home to a hero's welcome, though he didn't feel like one. To him, the real heroes were the ordinary men and women who had risked everything for a better future. He walked through the streets of his hometown, shaking hands and accepting pats on the back. But his mind was elsewhere. He thought about the battles they'd fought, the lives they'd lost, and the sacrifices that had made victory possible. When he finally reunited with Emily, the moment was bittersweet. They embraced tightly, holding on to each other as if afraid the other might disappear. "You did it," Emily whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "You came back." "I promised I would," Jake replied, pulling her closer. "And I always keep my promises." For days they stayed close, reliving memories of the war and imagining what the future might hold. Neither of them wanted to forget what they'd been through. They owed it to those who hadn't made it home. But they also knew life had to move forward. The galaxy was changing, and they wanted to be part of it. General Laura Bennett retired shortly after the war ended, leaving behind a legacy of leadership and resilience. She spent her days traveling across colonies, meeting with survivors and listening to their stories. Though she had played a key role in humanity's victory, she often downplayed her contributions, insisting the credit belonged to everyone who had fought. "I was just doing my job," she told reporters during one interview. The real heroes are the ones who stood up when the odds seemed impossible. Recon Team Alpha disbanded officially, though its members remained close friends. Maria Lopez returned to engineering, using her skills to improve technology for civilian use. Alex Martinez joined a humanitarian organization, helping former slaves reintegrate into society. And Jake? He decided to stay involved in the Galactic Defense Force, training new recruits and mentoring young soldiers eager to protect their world. As months passed, humanity began to settle into its role as a galactic power. Diplomats negotiated treaties with neighboring species, forging alliances based on mutual respect rather than fear. Scientists collaborated with alien researchers, sharing knowledge and advancing technology for the benefit of all. Trade routes reopened, connecting distant planets and fostering cultural exchange. Slowly but surely, the galaxy became a more connected and hopeful place. But not everyone was ready to forgive or forget. Some species harbored resentment toward humanity, blaming them for disrupting the balance of power. Others viewed humans as dangerous upstarts, unpredictable and reckless. These tensions simmered beneath the surface, threatening to boil over at any moment. Still, humanity remained committed to peace, knowing that coexistence required patience and understanding. Emily continued to speak publicly, advocating for unity and cooperation. She traveled to newly liberated planets, meeting with leaders and citizens alike. Her message was simple. We're stronger together. No matter how different, we share the same hopes and dreams. Let's build a future worth fighting for. Her efforts earned her widespread admiration, though not everyone agreed with her vision. Critics accused her of being naive, arguing that some species couldn't be trusted. But Emily refused to give up. She believed in the goodness of others, even when it wasn't easy to see. Change takes time, she told a group of skeptics during one heated debate. It won't happen overnight, but it will happen if we work for it. Meanwhile, Jake found purpose in training the next generation of soldiers. He taught them not just how to fight, but how to think critically and act with integrity. War isn't glory, he told his students during one lesson. It's pain, loss, and regret. But sometimes it's necessary. When it is, remember why you're fighting, for something bigger than yourself. His words stuck with many of his recruits, shaping their perspectives and guiding their actions. Though Jake missed the simplicity of civilian life, he knew his role was important. The galaxy still faced challenges, and someone had to prepare humanity for whatever came next. Years later, humanity looked back on the war with mixed feelings. It had been a defining moment, a test of character that revealed both the best and worst of their nature. Memorials were built to honor the fallen, their names etched into stone as reminders of the cost of freedom. Museums displayed artifacts from the conflict, telling the story of how a small, determined species stood up to an ancient empire and changed the course of history. For Emily and Jake, life moved on, but the lessons of the war stayed with them. They married quietly, surrounded by family and friends, and settled into a modest home near the ocean. Every evening, they walked along the beach, watching the sun dip below the horizon and talking about the future. They dreamed of children, adventures in a galaxy where wars were a thing of the past. One night, as they sat on the porch gazing at the stars, Emily turned to Jake with a smile. "Do you think we'll ever explore those?" she asked, pointing to the heavens. Jake chuckled softly. "Probably. Knowing us, we'll find trouble wherever we go." They laughed together, the sound carrying on the breeze. Despite everything they'd been through, the fear, the loss, the pain, they still believed in the promise of tomorrow. Humanity had stared into the abyss and emerged stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they were ready to face them, together. And so, under the watchful gaze of countless stars, humanity stepped boldly into a new era. The road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, but they carried with them the spirit of resilience that had brought them this far. They had fought for their place among the stars, and now they intended to thrive there,